So you see here, we're not thinking about any details whatsoever. We're starting from base mesh just because that makes our life a bit easier. And then we are just blocking in just the landmarks. This is not to get the design down. This is so that we have ears, we have the nose in our approximate spot, we have the eyes, and we have the mouth being open.
And one thing I want to note here is just that as you get more and more experienced, you do more and more sculpts, it gets a lot easier to visualize the final result. Like at this point, it might, especially if you're just starting out, it might be hard to see how you can go from something like this to what we had in the beginning, whereas there's quite a big difference in terms of details. Even the shape, the silhouette is also kind of different. But the fact that we have all the primary landmarks in there, that allows us to then, modify it to get closer to something that we want.
Then we will refine it. There's obviously a big difference between these two. Let's just bring it up. If you hit Shift S, you can make a snapshot and you can see the difference. So what's happening now is that we're getting in the actual eyeballs. We're refining a lot of different shapes. We see we get it more rounded down here. We have a central line here, and we're just getting more of the feeling into it. Obviously, we're shaping a lot of things as well. Like we completely killed his chin. The ears are a lot smaller, but overall, we're just working from big to small. We're just getting more and more granular. And then let's have a look at the next step. This is again getting more granular, but also adding teeth. It's really important that you're adding all the elements you need. It's so important that you're adding them, because otherwise he looks like this old grandpa who can only eat soup when this is supposed to be a ferocious troll. So we're going in, just getting a bit more granular. You can see that a lot of things are still exactly the same, but we're just getting more refinement in all the different areas.
It's kind of like a printer in a way, where you're like line by line, you're sort of adding more and more details.
Yeah, exactly. And then between these two, there's a lot of difference. Like here, you can see if we go back and forth between these two, there's a big difference in the face. So this is where, now we have all the landmarks down, everything is here. Now we're going in and we're actually refining the shapes a lot more, and we're adhering more to the original concept. You could of course go with the original concept from the beginning, but I prefer to block it out and keep it messy, get everything in there, and then we can start to really refine it. You can see as well, particularly from the side, if we go between these two, you see there's a huge difference between these two. But it's mostly proportional. But the overall thing is, again, we go from big to small. You can also see we've gone in here and cleaned up a lot of the shapes. There are no more brush strokes, and we're just really trying to get nice, clean shapes. Which is kind of funny, because if you look at the final result, we have this incredibly detailed sculpt of it, and there's nothing of this here, because again, from big to small.
Yeah, right now, there would be no sense in just putting in a lot of pores and figuring out a lot of the minute details, because we're still working on the shapes.
And then we will refine it even more. And this is where we're getting more into the mid-frequency. When we keep talking about mid-frequency, this is kind of what we mean. You can see that everything just becomes more refined, and you're getting this level of detail between the main shapes. So here you see we have, there's a frequency going here, you have this shape going here, you have this, it goes up, goes down, and you have more separation between these. But if you were to look at what we had before, the shapes are incredibly clean. So we're just breaking the shapes up a lot more, and we're adding shapes within shapes. If you don't do this, then your final sculpts are never going to work. You really need this level to make sure it's working.
I would say that's the number one issue I see, not just for beginners, but also more advanced artists, that they tend to forget about this step. They get really good at the silhouette, and they get really good at, some of the concepting, and then figuring out, how do I over detail this sculpt? A lot of the time, they miss the mid-frequency step, which is kind of like the backbone of the detailing step. Without this in here, your sculpt is never going to look as good as it could have.
Yeah, we have a whole separate video on this from last year, where we cover how to really think about mid-frequency, what specifically is that. And then we are getting into with even more mid-frequency, and we're adding asymmetry to it as well. Now you can see that everything is just more refined, and we've been breaking up the symmetry. You can see here in the mouth, everything is just nicely broken up, and you can see there's really nice skin feeling. But again, you're not seeing any pores or anything like that. This is all sculpted by hand. You're not seeing any stuff from alphas or anything like that, because it's still at this level, right? It still doesn't really, it's still not there. It's still, the shapes are kind of there. If we were to zoom out, they would probably look quite similar at like this level, but it's still not there. But at this level, now we have set up a lot of the shapes to really work as a foundation for the pores. If mid-frequency was like shapes within shapes, now we have shapes within shapes within shapes. So we're just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And then finally, now we have the only difference between these two is really we have gone in and added a lot more alphas and some shape changes here and there, but really just gone in and just add all this crazy level of resolution, which you can see here. Which this is only possible because we had good shapes around it.
Yeah, it's actually interesting seeing the before and after for number 6 and number 7. Shape-wise, really nothing has changed, but you can see because we've sculpted in all the mid-frequency here, the pore detail is a supporting detail that just adds that last bit of realism. Without the mid-frequency there, that would kind of fall flat.
And this is the level which makes it realistic as well. If you don't have the pore level, it can look like a cool statue or sculpt or concept. But if you want to actually fool the human eye, you need this level of breakup here as well. This is also the level which is a lot of fun to do, because you can just go crazy with this as well. What a lot of people do though is they would add the pore level. Let's get this guy back here where we can see the pores. So something like this. So now you can see a hint of the pores here. What they would do, they would add this level at this stage, where we can see we're like a whole level of frequency behind, or even at this stage. This is probably the most beginner stage, where you would add the high frequency here, and now you're wondering, why doesn't it look real? Well, it's because you're two levels behind. You're missing like first a whole refinement pass between these two, but then you're also missing a whole refinement level between these two. So you really have to build each step up from the last one, and you can't rush into it. It is hard though, because how do you know which level you should take it to before you're adding the pores? And that is honestly just tricky. It just takes experience to get to there.
Yeah, one thing I would say, just to help you guys a little bit out there, is that once you're at the stage where it's still kind of a blank slate, but you can start adding details to it. The clay buildup, standard, and Damien standard brush are probably your preferred tools, or should be your preferred tools there, and just in terms of volume and carving in with the Damien standard in to make contrast between shapes.
Then our second tip, because we are full of tips today. So here we have our guy from one of the earliest steps, and I want to show you how we prefer to sculpt. Morten and I kind of ended up with the same sculpting technique. Kind of by accident, I suppose.
Totally by accident, yeah.
and the way it revolves around using the clay buildup brush, and you can keep the alpha off, or you can keep it to a simple alpha. Doesn't really matter that much. This is personal preference. I prefer alpha 06. I believe you prefer to sculpt without alpha?
Yeah, no alpha, yeah.
So no alpha. But we're just going to be using this for now. So I'm going to subdivide this up, so it's a bit clearer. The way I prefer to sculpt is I'm working across the shapes. So what does this mean? Let's say we want to refine this shape here because it's quite messy. Now, instead of sculpting like this and adding volume this way, I find this to be really hard when it comes to controlling it, because now I'm controlling the length of it. But what I prefer to do, I prefer to work across like this. So I do strokes like this.
Yeah, one advantage about this technique is something that we talked about before. Treating the form like this, where you're sculpting across the form, that's treating it as a 3D form. It's a piece in 3D space. Whereas you're sculpting with the form, you're treating it more as a drawing. Like if you're with the form like that, it's more like you're trying to draw the shape instead of trying to sculpt the shape.
Yeah, it's really easy for you to go in here and you're adding a scar or you're adding wrinkles to him, and now he has like the old man wrinkles up here, and you're just going in and you're just adding wrinkles, and now you're done. This is drawing the shape on. But what we're trying to do is maybe you can add a little hint of some wrinkles here. Let's do something like this, and then we're going across the shape to make sure the volumes are here, that we're sculpting it as proper volumes. If you do it this way, you're gonna have far better volumes.
Yeah, if you're drawing it in, then in most cases, like Henning just did there, it should be as a guide, not as the final thing that defines the shape.
So let's just sculpt a little bit more so we can show what I mean. So what you often get though is you get brush strokes this way. Less so with Morten's technique, because well, Morten's no alpha, because then there isn't any alpha to do it. But even with this one as well, you won't get a whole lot, but you will get some. So let me show you how you get rid of these brush strokes. So here you have brush strokes now. The natural way of doing this is how nearly all beginners do it. They hold on the shift key and they go smoothie mode. And now the details are gone. And yeah, you just successfully smooth out the brush strokes. But you also kill the entire shape here. Maybe you had a lot of interesting volumes going around here. You had a lot of things here going like this. And now they're just all gone. What I prefer to do is I prefer to set the alpha to a lower amount. And then just working over the shape like so. Just really refining it. Holding on the Alt key as well. Just so I can carve in. And then just working it up. And now you can see that we're getting rid of the brush strokes while also refining the shape. So I never really smooth it out. I really prefer to work up the volume to take it to the next level. So it's not that I do a refinement pass and smoothing pass. I kind of keep working on this at the same time. And you just get this really lovely undulation here.
Yeah, you get a
really
nice sort of like tertiary form in there. For me, my technique is kind of like a mix of the two. I do way more sculpting than I do smoothing. But smoothing helps me to, not as a broad brush, but as a tiny brush. I will go in some areas, smooth them out a little bit, very, very subtly with a very low intensity, sculpt on top. So it's like a mix of the two. But an overuse of the smooth brush, I think, is something that you tend to see a lot, especially when people start sculpting, because it's a natural step. You know, you want to smooth out the shape. Well, use the smooth brush. Whereas in reality, adding more form to it to sort of help fix the differences between the peaks and the valleys really allows you to create some more interesting shape in there, I think.
So I can see here the volume is now a lot cleaner and more refined than it was, and we barely touched the smooth brush, just a little bit. Hold on shift key and just add a little bit of variation to it. So yeah, this is really how I prefer to work. Refine, go over and refine it at all times. Get in the volumes and work the volumes up. Don't draw the volumes in there. We have a whole video on this as well called How to Sculpt Like a Pro in ZBrush, and we showed this way more in depth. Then the last tip we have is use the silhouette view. This is something we have just conveniently hidden here. So you have to be in ZBrush 2020 for this. And if you are, it's going to be there by default. But if not, you can go to Preferences, and we have Thumbnail down here in the bottom. And I have put both of these, Thumbnail and Silhouette view, here. So now I can disable it, or I can set the Silhouette view to be enabled, so you can see just a small view of what the character looks like, or you can only see the silhouette. Let's go back to this, and now we can start to explore the silhouette of it. And let's make the silhouette way bigger. So the reason the silhouette is so important is because this is really one of the first things people are going to see when they see a character. You can so quickly identify what character is what based on the silhouette. If you have like the Mickey Mouse versus Donald Duck, it's an instant read. And your goal should really be to make sure that your characters read as fast as humanly possible. It's also a great tool just for pure from a design point of view. Like here you can see that it's not a very interesting silhouette. It just looks like a potato with a little carved hole into it here. You can kind of get what kind of character this is. You know, he's clearly not like a super good guy, but it's not very clear what it is. Then we can go in here, and now you can see that the silhouette is more refined right away. But you can still see it's still not a very good design. You see here that this is a completely straight line, and then it's just a bit messy. It just doesn't flow very nicely into each other, the different shapes for it, and it's very boxy.
He's a homeless potato man without teeth.
Yes, exactly. And then we can add teeth to it, and we can refine it a bit more. So the problem I'm having here is that it's almost like a 90-degree angle. It goes straight down, and then it goes almost straight to the right. So now we can start to refine it a bit more, where it becomes a bit more organic, and you can add the teeth to him as well. So you can see this, of course, in the viewport here as well, but it's way easier to see this if you're looking at the actual silhouette view. It's not so clear from the front view because the vast majority of this character here is hidden by his body. So I prefer to look at this in the side view. And then you can see something big happens when we're really just going in and just changing him dramatically. And now he looks so much more interesting. Now his body is a lot higher up. And you can just get kind of character this guy is. It's definitely a creature. It's kind of humanoid, but it doesn't just look like a potato with a little mouth into it. And then we're refining it and just going in and just trying to add some more volumes to it and trying to refine the volumes a bit more. And then just keep doing that. You're gonna see less and less silhouette change the further you go along, because this ties into our main point that you should work from big to small, and that's exactly what we're doing here. We're going from big shapes, like almost a generic base mesh, to smaller shapes, and then we'll just keep refining it. And between the last levels here, yeah, sure, you can see a lot of stuff happening here, but the main design really isn't changing that much when it comes to the silhouette. So you can of course go closer and closer and closer here, and then you're going to see more and more changes. So the less your silhouette changes between the different levels and the more you're sculpting on it, the more solid your design is most likely going to be. So yeah, those are our 3 tips for sculpting in ZBrush. First one, again, go from really big shapes to really small shapes. And then sculpt across the shape. Use the clay buildup brush with an alpha or with a simple alpha, or without an alpha or a simple alpha. And then just work across the shape and avoid using a smooth brush if you can. And then use the silhouette view as much as possible, particularly when you're designing characters. So yeah, we really hope this has been useful for you. We would love to hear what tips you have for actual sculpting technique, if there are any magical brushes you found, or whatever it is you're thinking about when you're sculpting to get appealing sculpts. So let us know in the comments, like the video and subscribe, and also hit the little notification bell as well.
If you're looking for training or high quality assets, make sure to stop by the FlippedNormals marketplace, and if you're interested in supporting us by buying our merchandise, you can check that out in the description below.
Hey guys, Henning E. Morton from FlippedNormals here. This is a video I've been wanting to do for a long time now, and it's about sculpting techniques. This is something I haven't really seen covered before. I see some people talking about speed sculpting or like how to sculpt a specific thing, and we've done that as well. But this is going to be purely sculpting technique. How do you use the brushes to get a good result? How do you just work with ZBrush just to create good form?
It's like practical sculpting theory.
Yes, exactly. So this is not about anatomy or sculpting eyes or these kind of things, even though we might dabble in. We sometimes do. But this is purely about how do you sculpt. Like, how do you get a good form here?
Yeah.
So specifically what I want to show is my personal approach here to sculpting and generating form. This is how I've been sculpting for years now, and it's one of these ways which it just seems to work really well for me, and I feel I can sculpt anything. Like, whatever it is in ZBrush, I can sculpt this using this technique here. And so let's just get started with this. The way I'm using ZBrush is mostly by clay buildup and the Alpha 06 as a general one. By default, you might have this one, which is super nice, but it has a lot of texture. It's a bit too much texture for me. And then you have with nothing, which I will be using as well, but it doesn't have enough texture for me, so I think it's a bit hard to get specific shapes. But you can also totally just use this without anything. So we're just going to be sculpting right now with Alpha 06, the round one, and we don't really know what we're going to be sculpting. Like, honestly, this here is just like to generate some shape.
It's about, just to talk about it.
Yeah, it's about the journey, not the destination here. So regardless of what it is, I'm pretty much just starting off just with big, broad strokes here. And also, you need a tablet. Like, we had questions about this as well. Can you do the mouse? You can't do this mouse.
No, don't do the mouse.
Don't do the mouse.
Also because, I mean, you might be able to do it to a certain extent, but at some point you're just going to start to be frustrated, and that is not going to, it's not good.
No. So whenever I'm doing like a head, maybe this here is a head now. You can see I just blocked it in, and maybe this is a nose, and here could be like some eyes here. So this is a hard one for me to do because I have to explain the way I've been doing it for long. It's like, how do you explain handwriting? So it's gonna be a bit of like just watch and learn.
Yeah.
So the way I'm doing this is I'm not just going across like this. I'm not just sculpting with direction. I'm going across. I'm doing this, going across the shape. And the reason I do this, it just seems to just work for me. It gives me really nice textures, and it gives me really nice control over the form of this.
It's a lot nicer to fade. It's a lot easier to fade out the form, you know, to have a peak in the center of the form and have it fade out towards the edges. If you work across the form versus
kind of blend it, right?
Exactly. So if you just do with the form, like in general, I'm not a big fan of sculpting with the form.
No.
Like the first example we're hitting, just straight across it.
Compare this.
Yeah, exactly.
To this.
It's harder to control, and it feels less organic. Even if you're using an alpha, like, or no alpha with the clay buildup brush, you don't get the same organic feel from it.
No.
It's harder. So across the form just gives you a lot more fine control.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I can't stress this how important this is for me. Like, and this is something I've just been doing for years now. And then, so you made this little cheekbone thing, or like you made some little cheekbones here, or whatever the hell.
Kind of looks like E.T.
Yeah, it kind of does. So you can see here, it's always across. If I'm doing a nose here, I'm not doing this and then doing like this. I'm sculpting across the form to get these volumes here. Because then, like Morten was saying, you can blend them. Like now, everything is just kind of blended together, just kind of by default. And then if we want to carve something in, just hold on the Alt key. And this is just the way I'm doing it. I'm just kind of like circling around here now. And then it's still just going across the form here. So I'm not doing this to get the shape here, to blend it. I'm going do this and then go across it. So just so it's super clear what I mean by across, I mean this.
Done. There you go.
Instead of
with the form, or along the form, I guess. It's you wanna go perpendicular to the direction of the form.
Yeah,
I suppose.
Yeah. So again, completely personal preference here. This is just what works well for me. So,
and I mean, it happens to work well for me as well. Yeah. So who knows?
Maybe we're onto something here.
Maybe it works for you too.
So now I'm just sculpting some stuff here, like completely freestyle, no reference, no thing in mind here. So you can just see, like, I'm just working up the volumes here, fairly low intensity actually. Well, like this is default here, but I'm not holding the max pressure. Like if you were to use a mouse here, like I have a mouse right here, it would just be the same pressure all around here. But it's just like maybe I have 30% of the actual pressure here, because this means that I can now blend stuff super nicely. So let's say I have a shape like this. He's super angry. So I have a shape like this now, and I want to blend this together here.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna use a smooth brush. I never use a smooth brush, essentially. I can just work across the form here with low intensity.
Yeah.
And just really blending this together.
The issue I have with, so I'm not like a no smooth brush evangelist here or anything. I'm not a hater, but like I try to keep my smoothing to a minimum. Yeah. It's kind of like, so you're doing real clay sculpting, right? And if you have like a oil based or water based, like if you have water, turpentine, or whatever you're using to smooth it out, you lose a lot of detail and a lot of form really quickly. So you have to be really careful with it. Whereas the technique where you fill in the gaps that the smoothing would create otherwise, you get like these extra little forms in there. Instead of just like smoothing things out and losing cool sculptural detail, you can actually build up some extra form.
You see all this variation here. It feels like, I mean, obviously the sculpture here is absolutely terrible, but don't even know what this is here. But the point is, you still have these sculptural details. You have this, like, it almost feels a bit like skin, just because you have this variation here. Compare like this smooth area here, which nothing hasn't been treated yet, to like this area here, which has been treated. It just feels far more organic and interesting right away. Just because we worked across the model, and I haven't hit the shift key once here, but also like I said here, I don't use a smooth brush ever. Like I'm more like Morten. Like I do use a smooth brush occasionally. It's just like I try to avoid it as much as I can.
Yeah.
Because if the moment I smooth something out, you're destroying shape. That's the way I'm looking at it. You're destroying what's there, And in some cases, that's what you want to do. You want to remove something. Let's say I'm like, oh, this is terrible. The eye here is terrible. I'll just go like, doop, and now the eye is gone. But if I were to, let's actually subdivide this once more, and I just add some more details here. So if you have, let's say you have too many strokes here. You have too many brush strokes here, and this is a bit too nasty. In a final model, unless you're going for a sculptural feel, you don't want to have brush strokes. You need to remove them at some point, because otherwise it looks like your character is made out of clay, which is awesome if you want to make it sculptural. But if you want to make it out of skin, you don't want this. So 2 ways of smoothing this out here now. One is smooth it. Boom. The other way is to be more subtle about it. If you smooth it here, that's like the whole turpentine. That is like you put water on clay and you just smooth it out with a cloth. Everything is gone now. Everything of interest is gone. The way I'm doing this takes more time, but it gives far better results here. I'm going over with, you can decrease the intensity, or you can just have a light pressure of the hand and just working across it here.
Yeah. So and one thing I would actually advise you to try and experiment with as well is like, so earlier on when you're sculpting, keep the intensity where it is. Yeah. But the further you progress with your sculpting, the more detail you start to put in, like you progress to the secondary and tertiary details, you can try and lower the intensity, like Henning said, because then the control that you need to exercise on your hand in terms of the pressure is way less, so it becomes a little easier, especially with this kind of smoothing, where you have a lower pressure on the Z intensity is lower. It makes it easier to smooth in quotation marks. So
what Morten is specifically talking about here is, so right now this is as fine as I can go. Like with my current pressure, like of the hand, and now I'm barely touching the tablet here, and you can still see that you have these brush marks here. So what I will be doing, and what Morten's talking about, is bring it down. I'll bring it down to something like 5 or even lower, and like maybe like 2. And now I'm just working across it here now again. Just working across the form, and all the brush strokes will now mostly be removed. So I'm trying to not remove them completely, just because they add a lot of character to the sculpture here. They just add a lot of form to it. Again, compare this here to like this.
The nice thing is you just have more control.
Yeah.
I mean, you can of course have control with the smooth brush as well. You can do the same thing where you lower the intensity of your smoothing, and it gives you better control. But I do think you run the risk of removing some of the nice sculptural detail that you've done.
Absolutely. What I'm also doing when I'm refining it like this, I don't regard it as a smoothing pass. I regard it as a refinement pass. So for this kind of stuff here now, sure, there are some brush strokes here. We want to remove the brush strokes. Again, smooth it, or you can actually or you can refine it. So here, bunch of stuff here. So let's increase the intensity a little bit here. And instead of destroying the form and make it smooth, I'm just regarding it as I just want the shaper to read a bit more here. Like I want to, maybe there are some like muscles going down here, or maybe has a bit of like a fold going down. I'm adding like the skin, like the weight of the skin maybe around here. You would definitely have like a lips or something like this. So you would just have shapes going around this. So I'm often doing this with really low intensity, just because it's about refinement for me. Instead of sculpt, smooth, it's just old sculpture. It's sculpture on, first you're doing the big shapes here, where it's like get a super shitty nose up and around, super shitty eyes, and then you're going in and you're just refining it.
I think I see that a lot, just thinking about it, for people who are starting out with sculpting in ZBrush, is that often there's like, I think there's like 2 ways of 2 mistakes that I see. One is adding just the sort of primary forms, primary shapes, and then going crazy with alphas. Yeah. So that's like irrelevant for this example. The other one would be to add the primary forms, but then once they get to the secondary ones, they start to smooth things out too much, and you end up with a weird sort of kind of defined primary shape-wise model, but you lose a lot of the definition. Yeah. And then you have this semi-smooth but with details model, and it's should almost find an example, but it's how do I explain it? I think it's a very clear indicator of someone who's starting out with sculpting, because the smooth shift key is right there. It's so easy. Maybe you should just even like like relocate it or something. Use something else. Like do an exercise where you're like, okay, for this entire face, I'm not going to use smooth at all.
You can actually do this. You can hold on the shift key and you can set this to something like, where is Mr. Trim Dynamic here? Where have you hidden yourself?
Trim adaptive.
Where is
left,
it?
left, and then down.
There we go.
There we go.
So now, I'm sure this was super fun for you guys watching us do this. We're not editing this out. So what you can do now, you can actually, instead of now the shift, the smooth brush, it will now be the trim dynamic brush.
Yeah.
So now you're just forced to now work with planes here instead of we're just smoothing it out. So this is again the whole thing. Like now you're sculpting, and then there's refinement, getting refinement planes, and you can actually use the trim dynamic as a smooth brush as well. Same thing. Like you see here, you have the shapes here. You can just hold on the shift key now for trim dynamic and do the same thing, just like lower intensity, and you get these real nice planes.
Yeah.
And then you can just work across it here and just get this super nice texture here. So definitely a good way of working like this. What I also do is, I think Morgan was talking about before, like it's hard because we don't have any images of that, is like missing mid-frequency details. That is like, so you have the primary shape, which is like the shape of the nose here, which is like the big strong shapes. It's like this kind of stuff. And then you have the fine frequency, which is like it's like pores and all these small things here. But then you have everything in the middle, which is like how the skin wraps around the mouth here. It's like these subtle...
And that's where I think most people go wrong, is that it's so... Because it's like when you observe something, you should watch our observation video, by the way. When you observe something, if you don't have a trained eye, what you'll see is like, you will see like the silhouette, and you'll see the major shapes. And you also see the super fine detail, because that's stuff that's really easy to pick out. Like, you know, you have the pores on a scan. Okay, that's cool. You know, it covers the entire thing. That's easy to see. The shape of the head. Okay, that's easy to see. But the way that the skin folds, like if you're aged a lot, you have wrinkles.
You're in the sun a lot.
Yeah, finer wrinkles. That's this kind of stuff that's hard to pick up on if you're not trained in looking properly.
Yeah. This is specifically this kind of stuff here. This is what I actually spend a lot of my time doing when sculpting. Like this is it really is the frequency which is like which will just separate the experienced sculptor from the rookie here.
Yeah.
Because if you're not experienced, you're gonna skip this phase here. Like at this point here, you've already gone into pores. You've already gone into details here. But for me, I'm spending so much time getting this level here right.
And I see that, so like Henning and I, we worked on a film that shall remain unnamed, and this is the exact issue we were running into, and we were really arguing to get like, okay, we just give us 2 weeks, you know, give us 2 weeks or week or something, a day, just please an hour, just something where we get to focus on the secondary details, because we haven't had the time yet. We've only had time to focus on big anatomy. We've only had time to focus on silhouette and the technical stuff. There's been no refinement of the secondary details yet. And I think that's where you really start your creatures, characters, whatever it is, hard surface things really start to pop, really starts to shine. Like let's imagine you had like this sci-fi box. Okay, really easy, primary shape, box shape, right? Okay, that's cool. The tertiary shapes, which would be like the pores or something on a face, would be small inserts and rivets, right? But if you just do a giant box with rivets, that's super boring. You know, you want something that breaks up the box. Maybe you have like these hexagonal, because everything in sci-fi is hexagonal, like shapes going across, some that are smaller than the initial silhouette, but not as small as the bolts. So maybe that helps you to sort of figure out the detail level.
Sci-fi box.
Sci-fi box, yeah.
Yeah, I just can't stress how important mid-frequency is here. So now...
Okay, here's another example. Okay.
Give me another mid-frequency
You have
example.
a tree, right? So with a tree, the what is it called? The stem of the tree, that would be your primary details, right? Your leaves and your buds, that is your tertiary details. The secondary details is your branches and your big things that grow off. Maybe that helps you.
I think that. I haven't thought about that before. That's actually a good way of putting it. I like nature metaphors.
Nature metaphors instead of sci-fi ones. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just amazed by tree metaphors now.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to think of.
Yeah, but I think that's actually true in terms of the importance of it, though. That's why I actually really like the metaphor, because first I like metaphors, but the secondary details there, the mid frequency, is as important to a sculpt here as branches are to a tree. Otherwise, you have like this weird trunk with leaves on it. And it's like that is the equivalent here, like how weird it is.
Yeah.
Because once we have something like this, which now obviously super shitty sculpt, but like you said, we didn't know what we're doing here.
Well, I think it's your best work so far.
Thank you. I'm not sure what that says about my other work, but there is no move brush here. There is no smooth brush whatsoever. There is no thermodynamic, even though we set it to shift key. This is all clay buildup with one alpha here. The only thing we've done is we changed this from 25 to 6.
Yeah.
And that's it. So this is for me the most important lesson I've ever learned when it came to sculpture. Work across the form. Stick to just a few brushes. Keep it simple. That improved my sculpting more than anything I've ever done, apart from learning figure sculpting. Learn figure sculpting, guys. But then once you're at this stage here, you're not done. Like at this point here, I'm going to subdivide it once more. We're only now we're at 1.5 mil. So there's still too much texture in it for me here, and I'm still missing a frequency here. So what I'll do at this point, I'll do dam standard.
You're missing the secondary and a half.
Yes,
form.
Exactly. So now you can see I'm going in with super sharp stuff here. I'll take the intensity down a little bit, because this is a bit crazy.
I think that is a pro tip for you. I like to keep the dam standard at maybe 15 or so.
Yeah.
Just like 10 points below where I think it starts or something.
Yeah.
That usually gives me a lot more control.
Yeah, it's just a bit like you can see here. It's like whoop. It's just a bit crazy. So I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't really have like a preferred setting. Like I'm not like,
it's like whatever feels right.
Yeah, it's like
lower than the original.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So what I'll do here is, now we're clearly missing some sharpness here. So it's going between refining shapes or blocking shape out and then refining it, because you want this here to be sharp. This is something I've seen in a lot of people's sculpts. They're missing sharpness for it. So I really like how the skin folds here, but in reality, stuff is very sharp here. And also because when you are doing like shading and texturing, you're going to be losing all of this stuff here anyway. Like you're going to be losing all this sharpness through subsurface scattering, soft lighting, all this kind of stuff here. So I highly recommend taking a pass off with the damn standard brush and just really refining this here.
You see that, you see that so much with the details that maybe I've brought up this example before with scans. If you have access to scans, like maybe there's the free infinite reality scan or something.
Yeah.
Get that scan, or if you can get like a super close up scan of skin, the depth of skin pores blows my mind. Like when I look at skin pores in real life, you see them as tiny bumps that go in. But once you see it as a scan, like if the actual depth of pores, some people have deeper pores than others.
Clearly.
But I was actually amazed by the depth, and after seeing that, I think that made me realize that it's okay to carve in a lot deeper, using the dam standard and just exaggerating that form a lot more.
You can probably go a lot deeper than you really think you can.
Yeah.
When it comes to dam standard as well, I'm just going to show this in the back here, so there's nothing. I'm not just doing this. It's not just a straight line here. There is like variation in the stroke. That's the same as if you're drawing as well. You don't want to do this and just be done. You want to have you want to have play with it. You want to have areas which are like, it starts off soft, then it gets harder, and then it gets like soft again, and it gets a bit harder again. This just means that it's so much easier to create form with this. Instead of just doing where everything is the same, you can go in here and you can kind of create this like little overlaps and not just do everything in one stroke, but really just have differences in intensity here.
It sounds like we're describing an erotic novel right now.
We are. It's sculptural, it's sensual.
That's true.
So I'm always just going over here. Sure, it's slower, but it really just means that I can just really just go over the form and get these nice organic shapes here.
Oh, one thing to add to that, actually, while you're doing that there, exactly what you were about to do there. Man, Jesus.
Man, our mind is in sync.
Is opposite, is like detail opposite to the side you're cutting into or something. Like you could do this two ways. What Henning is doing now, where he's sculpting with the clay buildup on one side, to emphasize that side. Or you can go in with the damn standard on one of the edges and make that harder. So sort of then you get that soft fall off. It's so yeah, exactly
so like this.
that.
If you hold on the Alt key now you just get nice volume. And here I am sculpting with the form, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, don't use Damien standard across the form.
No.
That's
no,
that would be bad.
Dam standard is one of the coolest brushes because you can work with it with inverse. So let's say you want to have like some like spikes here or something like that, some like horns or whatever it is.
Yeah,
you can do that. Dam standard is like one of my favorite things in ZBrush by far. Like that is when it comes to like stuff like Mudbox versus ZBrush in terms of actual features. Well, ZBrush is more advanced, but in terms of pure sculpting tool set, they're fairly similar there. But what ZBrush has is good sculpting tools.
It's just the feel of the brushes. It's so hard to explain. I've talked to people about this before, like trying to explain the difference between Mudbox and ZBrush, and I can't do it in words. It's just a feeling.
Yeah, you can visually show it with like, this is what I can do in 10 minutes in ZBrush.
Yeah.
This and this is like your hair on the ground because you just tore all out in Mudbox.
One thing that's nice to note about the Damien standard brush, particularly with when you're doing form like this, is that you've gotten your primary shapes out of the way.
Yeah.
You really worked up your secondary forms. That's all good. And before you get to the tertiary ones, like Henning's doing now, like he's getting in stuff on the lips and...
You gotta add a scar to it, guys. You gotta add a scar to it. Sorry, Morten.
Damn it. Every single time. So if you have something like, let's say, the nose or something, or the lips, it's an excellent way to create contrast. And, yes, we should do a video about that, actually. Didn't we talk about... We totally talked about creating contrast within stuff not too long ago.
Yeah.
We'll do another video. But creating contrast within your sculpt. So it's now you're sort of like you're in between a stage between form and detail, and that's sort of like a contrast stage.
Yeah,
where if you have the nose that was just sculpted before with just the clay buildup, it can have that soft look to it, even if you're not using the smooth brush, right? But once you start using the Damien standard to define like a cut in, that's when you start to see contrast. Like even if there's contrast in color and there's contrast in shape, and this creates contrast in shape. Just like if you had a white thing next to a black thing and then next to a black thing again, you would look at the white thing because that's the one that's different. If you have an overall area that's softer, then once you start to cut into that shape, then you start to look more at the sharp shape because that's what stands out.
Yeah, for sure. Which is also important now that you don't want everything to be detailed. Like you don't want this. You don't want to do this on everything and just go crazy with it. So what I'm doing now is super ugly, but like it's like now everything has like I should do this a bit prettier, and I'll show you a specific example. So now I'll just do this like thing radially from the mouth here, which you can see some older people have. They have this crazy stuff here. The reason I don't do this now, there is no contrast here. Like now everything is the same. So if I were to work with this, let's say you do have an old person which has all these like wrinkles here. So first off, go back to clay buildup and just start softening it up here. You want to have areas of focus. You don't want everything to be equal. So you might want to have some wrinkles here, which are like the primary ones, which are the dominant ones.
Yeah,
that's how we were taught. We had a teacher called Peter Chan, fantastic artist, and he was talking about dominance in design, and it's all about you want to have areas which dominate other things. So right now, already just by going over here with the clay buildup brush, you can already see that certain things read better than others.
Yeah.
So and then it's almost like some kind of Thanos thing now. So
one thing that is actually a really good sort of trick for that is like if you're using the Dam standard or any sort of cutting brush to cut into stuff, then a really cool way to build up volume is that you can build up volume in between two Damien standard strokes, and that sort of like gives variation just to like that area, exactly stuff, like right? that. Because now you made it's kind of like you're drawing as a kid and you have like a coloring book. Now you're just sort of coloring inside the lines.
Yeah.
It can really, and that can really add just a really, like, it's almost free detail.
Yeah, it's like, look at this line here now. Like there are 3 lines here like this, but now I'm just gonna add volume to it. Again, going across the form here and just adding volume to it like this. This kind of stuff is so helpful to me. So this is obviously something we can noodle with forever now. But one last thing I want to show here is it's a very special brush. It's a brush not a lot of people know about. It's called the standard brush.
Oh my god!
I know.
It's crazy how underrated the standard brush is.
The standard brush is fantastic. I mean, it's kind of like tongue in cheek that like nobody knows about it, but seriously, nobody's using the standard brush here. It's
I love it for lips.
Yeah, it's
love
fantastic.
it for eyelids.
Like, so what I'm using this for is to add, and not using that to necessarily add like specific, or like to add like weight to it. I don't like it for like this kind of stuff to add weight to it. I prefer the damn standard and clay brushes with this.
Because then you run into that issue again where it's just like it's just a form that looks the same.
It just looks like this.
Yeah.
So, but I use it for specificity. I use it here to define stuff here. So let's reduce intensity a bit and speak a bit softer because we're doing fine stuff.
Also, I might be lying here, but correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe the standard brush preserves your sculpting underneath.
Yes. So if you have like
yes, exactly.
Let me actually show a specific example here. So if you have wrinkles here or you have this kind of stuff, super nice. And then you're set this back to freehand and nothing. Now you can see that it preserves stuff. This preserves the details, while the clay buildup will just destroy it.
Yeah.
Nice little stash here for you.
Like it preserves it to a certain extent. Like obviously, once you start expanding shit too much, you'll start to lose some of the detail.
So let's just talk about here now how the the standard brush works. I keep saying damn standard because that's what I'm used to, because that's what I mostly stick to here. But for the lips here now, right? I can just really go in here and just really add this sharpness to it. This is where I would actually use a smooth brush for it. So let's just see if I can find this back. Where do you live? Oh, now we have this problem again. Here we go. So like this is where I just want to smooth it off a little bit because it's just a bit too sharp here. So instead of going back to the clay brushes, I'll just have a little bit of smoothing here just to like soften off. But that's like this was literally the first time in this entire sculpt I'd used the smooth brush. So I think it's really good for this kind of stuff. You're really just adding like specificity to your model. But you can see like if this here was a sculpt, now we're at the last stages of it. Obviously this stage was skipped here was any kind of design or like I think this kind of stuff here is well sculpted. It's terrible from a design point of view. Like it's just not any, that's not been any part of it. But like in terms of like how we're sculpting here, this is how I've been doing it for years. And this works really well. Just really just working across the form here. I'll also do it for, like Morten was saying, for the eyes as well. You can hit the U key to get the C intensity. U for C intensity?
Intensity.
Yes. So here you can just see that you get a specificity level, which is I find this to be a lot better than something like
the damn standard. The damn standard here would be too aggressive. For example, this is where the built-in alpha of the standard brush is perfect.
Yeah, it is. So the damn standard is too aggressive, and the clay brushes are too general. I don't have enough control with them. So going in here and just adding some wrinkles, some specific lines, and now I'm not going across the form. I'm only going across the form when it comes to the clay brushes here. You can add some more weight to it here. And some people sculpt their entire thing with the standard brush, and that's totally okay as well. Whatever you prefer. A lot of people, they sculpt with the standard brush and then they smooth it out because they've been using ZBrush for like 15 years before they were clay brushes.
Yeah.
So that's totally valid as well. So this is generally how I'm working with sculpture. And I'm doing this regardless of what it is. So you can see here, no move brush, no smooth brush, essentially only the clay buildup brush with this here.
And it's a good exercise, really to try to do without the smooth brush.
Actually, one thing I want to show here as well is we briefly talked about this in the beginning. The clay brush without an alpha. This is really powerful as well.
That's my preferred method. I actually rarely use an alpha with the clay buildup.
It's such a good way of doing it as
just because for me, I personally just like the softer feel. I feel like I have more control if there's no alpha. But whatever works for you, really.
That's like total personal preference. I sometimes do this as well, just work without any alpha on it, because you still have sharpness for it. Like you can still get all the shapes done. Where I do use this specifically is, in the last kind of stages of like the secondary details, is going over it and just refining stuff here. Very similar to what I'm doing with the alpha on, but this one is nice because it doesn't leave any marks behind of it. It doesn't leave any strokes or anything like that. So this is for like, you still see there are some strokes here which I need to remove. So I'm going over it now. It's not smoothing. It looks like it's being smooth, but this is just going over it with the clay build-up brush here.
That's cheating, Henning.
Yeah. I love the argument of cheating in
3D.
When it's like you're already working in a computer.
Everything's a cheat.
Yeah. Where do you stop this? It's like, oh, do you gotta mix your own pigments using like egg whites or something like that? Like
eggshells.
Where do you stop this stuff?
Yeah, I only paid with ivory from a crushed elephant horn,
which you shot yourself. Brought from India. But yeah, so this is really like the last thing I want to show you here. Just how to use the clay build-up here without any alpha, with a super low intensity. Just really going across it here and just really just getting the subtleties. I'm not really sure if you can see this in the video, but really just doing this. So to sum this up, back of the head. So let's smooth this out. See, I'm smoothing now because I want to destroy. Yeah, I know. I want to destroy the shape here.
Sacrilege.
Yeah. So my personal approach in 30 seconds. Set this back to something like this. Start sculpting big, broad shapes here. Work across the shape. So let's just work across the shapes here. Then set the intensity down. Refine it more. Really just get shapes which are more natural. Smaller brush. Start getting like thinking about how skin folds across it like this. Again, work across the shape here. Get this like nice secondary skin folding here. Never smooth. Set this and then go back to maybe set the alpha to off. Sculpt across it here. Really just reduce all of this. Remove the brush strokes. Then Damien standard. Refine stuff. Don't do this. Have controlled little.
Just like you're doing sketching.
Yeah,
just imagine you're sketching on the form.
Really just controlling the forms here. And then once you're done with that, then it's the infamous standard brush. Really just getting this to get some volume here, to get some specificity to it. And then maybe at the end, maybe you want to do some subtle smoothing of different areas. Like if it's a bit too harsh.
Oh no.
Oh no. Complete sacrilege. So that's how to sculpt like a pro in around 35 minutes. This method here has worked really well for me over the years. It's the one I'm still using to this date. It's like a methodical workflow which works just day in and day out. And for me personally, it's improved the look of my model by like order of magnitudes. It feels so much more natural now, and it just gives me like an approach to how to actually sculpt. So we really hope that you've enjoyed this video here. Let us know if you have any comments, or if you have suggestions for more sculpting videos. We would love to hear your way of sculpting as well.
Oh yeah, that'd be interesting.
Or if you think this is a completely stupid way of sculpting, if you have any way to improve it, like we're all up for this.
Yeah. So if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you.